The trees on Therion 7 grew tall and thick, their bark harder than steel. Daehyun had been cutting them down for 15 years now. Ever since he came to this moon to get away from everything, the forest was quiet except for the sound of his saw and the wind moving through the branches. That was how he liked it. He was working on a particularly thick trunk when he heard the explosion. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder, making birds scatter from the trees. Daehyun stopped his saw and looked up. A column of black smoke rose from somewhere past the eastern ridge. A ship had crashed. Daehyun wiped the sweat from his forehead and considered ignoring it. Crashes happened sometimes on the frontier moons. Most of the time there were no survivors. But the smoke kept rising, and he knew his conscience would not let him sleep if he did nothing. He grabbed his medical kit and his rifle, then headed toward the crash site. It took him an hour to reach the wreckage. The ship had torn through the forest, leaving a path of destruction before slamming into a clearing. It was a small cargo vessel, the kind used by independent traders. The hull was split open and several people were stumbling around in the smoke. Daehyun approached carefully. "Anyone hurt?" he called out. A tall alien with gray skin and too many arms turned toward him. The creature was a Yithran, a species known for trading in questionable goods. "Human," the alien said, its voice like gravel. "You live here?" "Close enough. You need help?" 3 dead, 4 wounded. "Ship is finished." The Yithran gestured at the wreckage. "We were carrying cargo. Most of it is destroyed." Daehyun spent the next 2 hours helping the survivors. He patched up wounds and helped them salvage what they could from the wreck. The Yithran captain watched him work with calculating eyes. "You are good with medicine," the captain said. "You were military?" "A long time ago," Daehyun replied, not looking up. "I thought so." "You move like a soldier." The captain was quiet for a moment. "I cannot pay you much for your help. We lost everything in the crash, but I have something you might want." "I do not want anything. Everyone wants something." The captain walked to a section of the wreckage and pulled open a twisted door. Inside was a small cage, and inside the cage was a hooded figure. Goblin servant, female, young. She was supposed to be sold at the next station, but she is defective. Too quiet, does not respond well to commands. The buyer would have sent her back anyway. Daehyun looked at the small figure in the cage. Goblins were common servants across the galaxy, used by the Krillian Empire and sold to anyone with credits. They were considered barely intelligent, good only for simple labor. Most people treated them worse than animals. "I do not need a servant," Daehyun said. "Take her anyway. If you do not, I will have to dispose of her. She eats too much to keep if she cannot be sold." The captain opened the cage. "Consider it payment for saving my crew." The hooded figure stepped out slowly. She was small, maybe coming up to Daehyun's chest. Her movements were careful, like she expected to be hit at any moment. She wore a rough brown robe with a hood that completely covered her head and face. Daehyun looked at the captain, then at the small figure. Something about the way she held herself, so still and quiet, reminded him of soldiers he had known, soldiers who had seen too much. "Fine," he said. "I will take her." The captain smiled, showing too many teeth. "Good, she responds to basic commands. Feed her scraps. Do not expect conversation. Goblins do not talk much." Daehyun nodded and turned to the figure. "Come," he said simply. She followed him without a word. The walk back to his cabin took longer with the small servant following behind. She moved quietly, her bare feet making almost no sound on the forest floor. Daehyun did not try to talk to her. What would he say? He had never owned another living being before, and the idea made him uncomfortable. When they reached his cabin, the sun was starting to set. The building was simple, made from the same hard wood that Daehyun cut every day. It had one large room with a kitchen area, a sleeping area, and a workshop. A small loft above held his bed. "You can sleep there," he said, pointing to a corner near the stove. "I will get you a blanket." The hooded figure stood very still, not responding. Daehyun found an old blanket and set it in the corner. "Are you hungry?" Still no response. The figure just stood there, hood facing toward him but revealing nothing. "Right," Daehyun muttered. "I will make food. You can eat if you want." He prepared a simple meal of stew from dried meat and vegetables. He filled 2 bowls and set one near the blanket. The hooded figure did not move until he returned to his own seat. Then, slowly, she sat down and pulled the bowl close. She did not remove her hood to eat. Instead, she tilted it just enough to bring the spoon to her mouth, keeping her face hidden. Daehyun watched for a moment, then decided it was none of his business. Everyone had their reasons for hiding. After the meal, he showed her where things were kept. Firewood is outside. Water pump is behind the cabin. If you are going to stay, you should know where things are. The figure nodded slowly. Can you understand me? Daehyun asked. Another nod. Can you speak? The figure hesitated, then gave a small shake of her head. All right. Daehyun stood and stretched. I start work at dawn. You can help if you want, or you can stay here. I do not care either way. He climbed the ladder to his loft, leaving the small figure sitting near the stove. As he lay in his bed, Daehyun wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had come to this moon to be alone, to escape the memories of war and loss. Now he had a servant he did not need and did not want. But when he had looked at that cage, at the way the small figure had stood so still and hopeless, he had seen something familiar. He had seen himself 15 years ago, broken and lost and waiting for someone to either help him or finish him off. Maybe that was why he had agreed to take her. Downstairs, the hooded figure sat in the darkness, listening to the human's breathing slow into sleep. She had been sold 7 times in the past 3 years. This human seemed different from the others, but she had learned not to hope. Hope only led to more pain. She pulled the blanket around herself and closed her eyes, wondering how long it would be before he discovered what she really was. 3 weeks passed, and Daehyun found himself getting used to having another person around. The hooded servant worked hard, never complained, and seemed to understand what needed to be done without being told. She carried water, stacked firewood, and helped organize his workshop. She moved like a shadow, quiet and efficient. Daehyun tried several times to get her to speak, but she never did. She would nod or shake her head when asked questions, but no words ever came. He stopped pushing after the first week. If she did not want to talk, that was her choice. He started leaving her small things: an extra piece of bread with breakfast, a warmer blanket when the nights got cold, a bar of soap that did not smell like engine grease. She never acknowledged these gifts, but they always disappeared. On the 23rd day, something changed. Daehyun was splitting wood behind the cabin when he heard a crash from inside. He dropped his axe and ran toward the door. Inside, he found his new servant on the ground, surrounded by scattered firewood. She must have been carrying too much and tripped over the threshold. Are you hurt? Daehyun moved toward her. She scrambled backward, her movements panicked. But in her haste, her hood caught on a piece of wood and pulled back. Daehyun froze. The face looking up at him was not a goblin. It was human. A young woman with dark eyes and black hair that had been shaved short on one side. Strange metal implants were embedded in her temples, small lights blinking slowly beneath her skin. Her face was thin and pale, marked with old scars. She stared at him with absolute terror, her hands coming up as if to protect herself from a blow. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Daehyun's mind raced. A human, she was human. All this time there had been a human woman living in his cabin, hiding under that hood, and he had not known. Please, she whispered. Her voice was rough, like she had not used it in a very long time. Please do not tell them. Daehyun slowly sat down on the floor, making himself less threatening. Tell who? Anyone. The traitors. The Empire, anyone. Her hands were shaking. They will take me back. They will put me in the cage again. I am not going to tell anyone, Daehyun said quietly, and I am not going to hurt you. She watched him with those wide, terrified eyes. She did not believe him. Why would she? She had been living as a slave, pretending to be something she was not, probably for years. What is your name? Daehyun asked. She hesitated. Mirai. Mirai, he repeated. My name is Daehyun. How long have you been hiding like this? 5 years. The words came out like a confession. 5 years since they took me. Who took you? The Krillian Empire. They attacked my ship. I was a researcher studying alien plant life. They took me and others to a facility. Her voice broke. They did things to us. Experiments. They were trying to make us into something else. Daehyun felt his blood run cold. He had heard rumors during his military days about Krillian black sites, places where they experimented on other species. He had always hoped they were just stories told to frighten recruits. The implants? He asked, gesturing to her temples. Neural modifications. They suppress emotions, enhance reflexes. They were trying to make human soldiers who could be controlled. She touched one of the implants carefully. I escaped during a facility breach, but I was already changed. I could not go home like this. And the implants, they make me appear non-human on most scanners. So you hid as a goblin servant. It was the only way. No one looks at servants. No one checks them. I have been passed from owner to owner, and none of them ever looked under the hood. She pulled her knees to her chest. Until now. Daehyun was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Then he stood and walked to his kitchen area. Mirai tensed, ready to run, but he just picked up a kettle and started making tea. "You can stay," he said without turning around. "You do not have to hide anymore. Not here. You do not understand. If the Empire finds out where I am, they will come. They track their experiments. These implants, they send out a signal. It is weak, but it is there. Then we will figure something out." He poured 2 cups of tea and brought one to her. "But you are not a servant here. You are a person. You can stay as long as you want." Mirai took the cup with trembling hands. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." Daehyun sat down against the wall, his own cup warming his hands. 15 years ago, I was a lieutenant in the Defense Corps. I led a company during the Frontier Wars. We held a position for 3 weeks against impossible odds. We saved thousands of civilians. That sounds like you were a hero. I was the only one from my company who survived. He stared into his tea. Everyone under my command died. Every single one. And I lived. The Corps gave me medals. They called me a hero. But all I could see were the faces of the people I failed to save. So you came here. So I came here. To get away from people who looked at me and saw a hero instead of a failure. To stop hearing their voices at night. He looked up at her. "I know what it is like to be broken. To feel like you cannot go home. So yes, you can stay. And no, you do not have to be anything other than who you are." Mirai was quiet for a long time. Then slowly, tears started running down her face. Not the quiet tears of pain, but the loud, messy tears of relief. She had been holding everything inside for so long that now it all came pouring out. Daehyun let her cry. He did not try to comfort her or tell her it would be okay. He just sat there drinking his tea, being present. When she finally stopped, she wiped her face with her sleeve. "I do not remember the last time someone was kind to me. Then it has been too long." Daehyun stood and offered her his hand. "Come on, let me show you something." She took his hand and he pulled her to her feet. He led her outside to the back of the cabin, where the forest opened up to show a view of the valley below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The endless trees stretched as far as they could see. "This is why I stay here," Daehyun said. "This view reminds me that the universe is bigger than my pain, bigger than my mistakes. It helps." Mirai stood beside him, looking at the sunset. For the first time in 5 years, she was not wearing a hood. The wind moved through her short hair and she closed her eyes, feeling it on her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "You do not have to thank me. Just be yourself. That is enough." They stood there until the sun disappeared and the stars came out. Mirai looked up at them, at the countless points of light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere up there was her home world. Somewhere up there was the person she used to be. But maybe, just maybe, she could start becoming someone new. Someone who did not have to hide. For the first time in 5 years, Mirai felt something she thought she had lost forever. She felt hope. And standing beside her, Daehyun felt something he had not felt in 15 years. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he could be someone's hero again. Not the kind with medals and ceremonies, but the kind that mattered. The kind that helped someone remember they were human. The days that followed were different. Mirai no longer wore her hood inside the cabin. She moved more freely, spoke more often, and slowly began to act like a person instead of a shadow. Daehyun gave her the small room he had been using for storage, and together they cleaned it out and made it into a proper bedroom. She still startled easily. Loud noises made her flinch. Sometimes she would freeze in the middle of doing something, her eyes distant, lost in memories. Daehyun recognized these signs. He had experienced them himself after the war. The ghosts never fully left. They fell into a routine. Daehyun would wake early and start the fire. Mirai would make breakfast. They would work together during the day, cutting timber, maintaining equipment, and managing the small garden Mirai had started. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Slowly, piece by piece, Mirai told him her story. She had been 20 years old when the Krillian raiders attacked her research vessel. They had been studying plant life on a frontier world, looking for species that could help terraform harsh environments. The attack came without warning. The ship's defenses were minimal because they were scientists, not soldiers. They took 12 of us, Mireille said one evening, staring into the fire. The rest they killed. I never understood why they chose us, specifically. We were just researchers. What happened at the facility? Daehyun asked gently. They called it Project Integration. The idea was to combine human adaptability with alien enhancements. They wanted to create soldiers who could think like humans but had the physical advantages of other species. She touched the implants at her temples. These were supposed to make us obedient, to suppress our emotions and free will. But they did not work on you. They worked. For a while. Everything was foggy, like I was watching myself from far away. But human brains are stubborn, we adapt. After 2 years, I started breaking through the conditioning. I learned to pretend I was still controlled while slowly regaining myself. She told him about the escape. A reactor malfunction had caused chaos in the facility. In the confusion, she and 3 others had run. She was the only one who made it to the transport hangar. I stole a maintenance uniform and hid in a cargo shipment. By the time they found me, I was 3 sectors away. She pulled her knees up to her chest, but I could not go home. These implants, they make me register as non-human on basic scanners, and I knew the Empire would be looking for escaped subjects, so I hid. I found a trader who sold Goblin servants, and I convinced him I was one. How did you convince him? I showed him that I could pass the scanners. I told him I was a mutant, a genetic defect. He did not care. He just saw something he could sell. She laughed bitterly. And he did. Over and over. I have had 7 owners before you. Were they cruel to you? Some were. Some just ignored me. You are the first who ever looked under the hood. She turned to him. Why did you? Most people do not care what their servants look like. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Because I know what it is like to hide. To wear a mask so people do not see what is really there. Over the following weeks, Daehyun shared more of his own past. He told her about the frontier wars when human colonies on the edge of known space were being raided by various alien factions. He had been young then, full of ideals about protecting humanity and making a difference. We were defending a colony called New Seoul, he said. 10,000 civilians were evacuating through a mountain pass. My company was supposed to hold the enemy back for 3 days. We held for 21. That is incredible. It was hell. We lost people every day. By the end, it was just me and 2 others, but the civilians got out. All 10,000 of them. He stared at his hands. The Defense Corps gave us medals. They paraded us around as heroes. But I could not stop thinking about the 97 soldiers who died under my command. It was not your fault. I was their commander. Their safety was my responsibility. He looked at her. I kept seeing their faces, hearing their voices. I would wake up at night thinking I was still in that pass, still fighting. So I resigned my commission, took everything I had saved, and came here. To hide. To heal. Or so I told myself. But maybe I was just running away. Mireille reached over and took his hand. You saved 10,000 people. That matters. So does what happened to you. And the fact that you survived it. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 broken people who had found unexpected understanding in each other. As the weeks turned into months, things continued to change. Mireille's health improved with regular food and rest. Her hair grew longer. The haunted look in her eyes began to fade, replaced by something brighter. She smiled more often. She even laughed sometimes, usually at Daehyun's terrible attempts to cook anything more complicated than stew. She also discovered something unexpected. The implants had done more than just try to control her. They had enhanced her physical abilities. She could run faster than a normal human, react more quickly, and see better in low light. Her mind worked faster too, processing information and making connections with unusual speed. I am not fully human anymore, she said one day while they were working in the garden. Sometimes I do not know what I am. You are Mireille, Daehyun said simply. That is all that matters. But both of them knew their peace could not last forever. The implants in Mireille's head continued to broadcast their faint signal. It was weak, barely detectable, but it was there. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, the Krillian Empire was still looking for its lost experiments. One evening, while Mireille was preparing dinner, she suddenly stopped. Her hand went to one of her implants and her face went pale. What is wrong? Daehyun asked, immediately alert. The signal. It just got stronger. I do not know why, but something changed. She looked at him with fear in her eyes. They will be able to track me now. How long do we have? I do not know. Days, maybe. If they have ships in this sector, they could be here in less than a week. Daehyun stood and went to the cabinet where he kept his old military equipment. He had not touched it in years, but he had kept it maintained out of habit. He pulled out his rifle, his combat knife, and his tactical gear. Then we have time to prepare, he said. We should run. I should leave. If I am not here when they arrive, you will be safe. No. Daehyun's voice was firm. I am done running, and I am not letting them take you back to that hell. You cannot fight the Krillian Empire. I am not fighting an empire. I am fighting whoever they send to this moon, and this is my territory. I know every tree, every hill, every cave. If they want to take you, they will have to go through me first. Mirai felt tears forming in her eyes again. Why would you risk your life for me? Daehyun looked at her. This young woman who had survived so much, who had kept her humanity despite everything that had been done to her. He thought about his soldiers, the ones he had failed to save. He thought about the years he had spent hiding from the world. Because you deserve to be free, and because for the first time in 15 years I have something worth fighting for. Outside, the sun was setting over the forest. In the growing darkness, neither of them noticed the faint glimmer of a ship entering the moon's atmosphere, far to the north. The hunters were coming. 2 days after the signal strengthened, Daehyun spotted the ship. He had been checking the northern ridge with his binoculars every few hours, and there it was. A small craft landed in a clearing about 15 kilometers away. It was a Krillian military design, built for speed and stealth. They are here, he told Mirai when he returned to the cabin. She had been expecting it, but hearing the words still made her hands shake. How many? I could not tell from this distance, but the ship can hold maybe 8 to 10 people. He spread a hand-drawn map on the table. They will need to track your signal. The forest will slow them down, but they will reach this area within 3 days. What do? We turn this forest into a maze, and then we make sure they regret coming here. Daehyun had learned every centimeter of these woods over 15 years. He knew where the ground was soft and treacherous, where the old trees had roots that could trip an unwary traveler, where the sight lines were good for shooting. Now he used that knowledge to prepare. They spent the next 2 days working almost non-stop. Daehyun set up tripwires connected to crude alarms made from tin cans and rocks. He dug shallow pits and covered them with branches and leaves. He marked trees with small cuts, creating a path that only he could follow in the dark. Mirai helped, her enhanced reflexes and strength making the work go faster. She also discovered she could sense the electromagnetic fields from electronic devices. When she concentrated, she could feel the faint pulse of the tracking equipment that would be looking for her signal. They are moving, she said on the second evening, her eyes closed in concentration. I can feel their scanners. 3 of them spread out coming from the north. Just 3? For now. The others might be waiting at the ship or coming from a different direction. Daehyun nodded and continued sharpening his knife. Good. Fewer targets to worry about at first. That night they ate a quiet meal. Both of them knew this might be their last peaceful moment for a while. After they finished, Daehyun pulled out a small pistol and offered it to Mirai. Do you know how to use this? I was a scientist, not a soldier. Then I will teach you the basics. Point and shoot. The safety is here. Do not use it unless you have to. But if you have to, do not hesitate. Mirai took the weapon, feeling its weight in her hand. It felt wrong, dangerous. But she remembered the facility, the experiments, the cage. She remembered 5 years of hiding and fear. I will not go back, she said quietly. If they catch me, I will not let them take me alive. They are not going to catch you. Daehyun's voice was firm. I promise you that. The hunters came the next day. Daehyun heard the first alarm around mid-morning. The sound of cans rattling echoed through the forest coming from the northeast. He grabbed his rifle and looked at Mirai. Stay in the hidden room. Do not come out unless I call for you or you hear me scream. If you hear me scream, run south to the cave we marked. Wait there for 24 hours. If I do not come, take the supplies and go as far as you can. I am not leaving you, you have to. If we both die, everything we have done means nothing. He touched her face gently. Please, Mirai, let me do this. She wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. This was who he had been before the guilt and isolation. A soldier protecting people who could not protect themselves. She nodded and went to the hidden room behind the false wall in the storage area. Daehyun moved into the forest like a ghost. Years of hunting had taught him how to move silently. how to use the trees for cover, how to become part of the landscape. He reached his first observation point and waited. 3 figures came into view. 2 were human mercenaries wearing combat armor and carrying advanced weapons. The third was a Krillian, taller than the humans, with gray-scaled skin and a helmet that likely contained tracking equipment. They moved cautiously, scanning the trees. "Signal is strong here," the Krillian said in accented English. "Subject is within 2 kilometers. "This place gives me bad feelings," one of the mercenaries muttered. "Too quiet. Stay alert. The subject may be dangerous." Daehyun waited until they were in the right position, then he fired. His shot was not aimed to kill, just to separate them. The bullet struck a tree between the Krillian and one of the mercenaries, sending bark flying. The 3 hunters immediately scattered, seeking cover. "Contact. Possible hostile," the mercenary shouted into his radio. Daehyun was already moving to his second position. He fired twice more, keeping them pinned down, then disappeared into the forest. Behind him, he heard the hunters regrouping and starting to pursue. Good. Now they were following him instead of heading toward the cabin. He led them on a chase through his prepared territory. They triggered 2 of his alarms, giving him their exact position. One mercenary stepped into a pit and twisted his ankle. The Krillian kept his team together, professional and cautious, but Daehyun knew these woods better than anyone. For 3 hours he played cat and mouse with them. He would fire from one position, then be gone before they could return fire. He stayed just visible enough to keep them focused on him. Several times they nearly caught him, but his knowledge of the terrain kept him one step ahead. Then everything changed. "Base. This is Hunter Team 2. A voice crackled over the radio Daehyun had taken from a discarded pack. "We have entered the target zone from the southwest. 4 operators, moving toward the signal source." Daehyun felt his blood run cold. There was a second team, and they were coming from a direction he had not expected. They would reach the cabin before he could get back. He had a choice. Keep the first team occupied and hope Mirai stayed hidden, or break off and try to reach the cabin first. He chose the cabin. Daehyun ran through the forest faster than he had moved in years. His lungs burned and his legs screamed, but he did not slow down. He burst into the clearing around his home just as 4 armored figures were approaching the front door. "Stop," he shouted, raising his rifle. The 4 hunters spun toward him. One of them, a human woman with cold eyes, smiled. "You must be the local. Bad luck for you getting involved in Empire business. Leave. Now. This is your only warning. We are here for the escaped subject. Give her to us and we will leave you alive." "No." The woman shrugged. "Your choice." The shooting started. Daehyun dove behind his woodpile as bullets tore through the air where he had been standing. He returned fire, forcing them to take cover, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. His rifle was good for hunting, not combat. Their weapons were military grade. A bullet struck the wood near his head and he felt splinters cut his cheek. He fired back, hitting one of the hunters in the shoulder. The man went down with a cry of pain. "Persistent," the woman said. "I almost respect that. But you are just one man." Then the cabin door opened. Mirai stepped out and Daehyun's heart nearly stopped. She was supposed to stay hidden, supposed to be safe, but she walked calmly toward the hunters, her hands raised. "I am the one you want," she said. "I am the subject. Let him go and I will come with you." "No," Daehyun shouted. "Mirai, get back inside." The woman hunter smiled. "Smart girl. But I think we will take you both. The Empire pays bonuses for witnesses." "That is unfortunate," Mirai said quietly, "because I really did not want to do this." Her eyes suddenly glowed with a faint blue light. The implants in her temples began pulsing faster, and then she moved. Daehyun had seen her enhanced reflexes before, but never like this. She crossed the distance to the nearest hunter in less than a second, moving almost too fast to see. Her hand struck the man's throat with surgical precision, and he dropped instantly. The other hunters opened fire, but she was already gone, rolling behind cover with inhuman speed. She came up on the other side and disarmed the second hunter with a move that looked like it came from decades of training, not months of living in the woods. "What is she?" one of the hunters screamed. "The subject." The woman shouted back, "Maximum force authorized." But Mirai was not stopping. The implants had fully activated, releasing whatever limiters had been holding her back. She moved like water, flowing around attacks, striking with devastating accuracy. Years of suppressed training and enhancement suddenly unleashed all at once. Daehyun used the chaos to take out the third hunter with a well-aimed shot. That left only the woman. The hunter leader faced Mirai, weapon raised. "You are coming back to the facility, subject. One way or another. My name is Mirai." Her voice was cold, nothing like the gentle person Daehyun had come to know. "And I am never going back." She moved again and the fight was over in seconds. When the clearing was quiet, Mirai stood among the fallen hunters, breathing hard. The blue glow in her eyes slowly faded. She looked at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "What did I just do?" she whispered. Daehyun came out from behind the woodpile. "You survived. That is what you did." But both of them knew this was just the beginning. The first team would reach them soon. And behind them somewhere, the rest of the Krillian forces would be coming. The war had started. There was no time to rest. Daehyun grabbed what supplies he could while Mirai stood guard, her newly awakened combat instincts making her constantly scan the tree line. The bodies of the 4 hunters lay scattered around the cabin, grim reminders of what they were facing. "The first team will have heard the gunfire," Daehyun said, stuffing medical supplies into a pack. "They will be here in minutes." "What about the ship?" "There could be more at the landing site. One problem at a time." He handed her a pack. "We cannot stay here. The cabin is too exposed. We need to get to the defensive position I prepared in the ridge." They had just started moving when Mirai stopped suddenly. "They are coming. I can feel their equipment." 7 of them now. They called for backup. 7? Daehyun cursed. "That is everyone from the ship." "Not everyone. There is still someone there." One person probably piloting, Daehyun thought quickly. 7 trained soldiers in the forest versus 1 retired veteran, and a scientist with experimental enhancements. The odds were not good. But he had not survived the frontier wars by giving up when the odds were bad. "We split their attention. You go east to the ridge position. I will lead them north and circle back. With your speed, you can be there in 10 minutes. I am not leaving you alone. You are not. You are getting into position to help me when I need it." He touched her shoulder. "Trust me. This is what I was trained for." Mirai did not like it, but she nodded. Before she left, she surprised them both by hugging him quickly. "Do not die, old man. I am 38. That is not old." He managed a small smile. "Now go." She disappeared into the trees with inhuman speed, and Daehyun turned north. He could hear the hunters approaching now, moving through the forest with military precision. He fired 3 shots in quick succession, loud enough to draw their attention, then ran. The chase was different this time. Before, Daehyun had been leading 3 hunters through unfamiliar territory. Now he was running from 7 soldiers who knew what they were facing. They moved faster, more aggressively, trying to flank him. He triggered one of his traps and heard a scream as someone hit a tripwire that sent a heavy log swinging down from the trees. That bought him a few minutes. He used them to get to higher ground where the rocky terrain would slow them down. A bullet struck the tree next to his head, and he dove for cover. They were getting closer. He fired back, heard a grunt of pain. 6 left, his radio crackled with static. Hunter team to base. 1 operator down, 1 injured. Subject and local are both armed and dangerous. Requesting orbital support, orbital support. That was very bad. If they called down strikes from space, the whole forest could be leveled. Daehyun needed to end this before that happened. He led them on a winding path through the densest part of the forest, where the trees grew so close together that visibility was limited to a few meters. Here, superior numbers meant less. Here, it was about knowing the ground and being willing to do whatever it took to survive. A hunter appeared from behind a tree, weapon raised. Daehyun was faster, his knife finding the gap in the man's armor before he could pull the trigger. 5 left, but he took a hit in the process. A bullet grazed his side, burning a line of fire across his ribs. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. No time for pain. Not yet. He reached the rocky ridge where Mirai should be waiting. The position was perfect for defense, high ground with cover and multiple escape routes. He climbed up, leaving an obvious blood trail. Let them think he was wounded and desperate. They came at sunset, moving cautiously up the ridge. Daehyun counted 5 figures, which meant his math was right. 6 left after he had taken 1 down, and 1 must have been too injured to continue. "We have you surrounded, local," a voice called out. It was the Krillian from the first team, the one who had been tracking Mirai's signal. "There is no escape. Surrender now and we will make your death quick." I have a better idea, Daehyun shouted back. You leave and I let you keep your lives. Brave words from a dying man. That blood trail tells me you have minutes left. Then you better hurry. They came up the ridge fast, trying to overwhelm him with speed and numbers. Daehyun met them with carefully aimed shots, forcing them to take cover among the rocks. But they were advancing and his ammunition was running low. Then Mirai struck. She came from above, dropping from a tree with perfect silence. Her first target never knew what hit him. She moved to the second before the first had even fallen, her enhanced reflexes turning her into a blur of motion. The hunters realized too late they were trapped between two opponents. Daehyun had the high ground in front. Mirai was behind them, cutting off their retreat, and darkness was falling, which only helped the defenders who knew this terrain. The Krillian team leader was good. Daehyun had to give him that. He organized his remaining soldiers into a defensive formation and tried to push through toward Daehyun. But Mirai harassed them from behind, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted, slowly picking them apart. A bullet caught Daehyun in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped his rifle and pulled out his pistol, firing with his offhand. The shot went wide, but it made the shooter duck, and Mirai used that moment to take him down. 3 soldiers left, including the Krillian. Orbital support. The Krillian shouted into his radio. Authorization code Delta 97. Target these coordinates. Daehyun's blood ran cold. They were going to call down fire from space. Everyone in this area would die, including the hunters themselves. They were that desperate to complete their mission. But before the Krillian could confirm the order, Mirai was there. She moved faster than Daehyun had ever seen her move, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. Her hand struck the radio, shattering it, then continued to strike the Krillian in a series of blows that happened too fast to follow. The Krillian was trained, experienced, and strong. But Mirai was enhanced, desperate, and fighting for her freedom. The fight lasted maybe 10 seconds. When it ended, the Krillian was on the ground, not moving. The last 2 soldiers saw their commander fall and made a decision. They ran. Daehyun let them go. He was too tired and too injured to pursue. He slumped against a rock, feeling blood soaking through his shirt. Mirai was at his side immediately, her hands gentle despite the violence they had just committed. You are hurt. Just a scratch. He tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. 2 scratches. Maybe 3. You need medical attention. She pulled out his first aid kit and started working on his wounds with surprising skill. The implants had apparently given her enhanced medical knowledge along with everything else. You fought well, Daehyun said, watching her work. Where did you learn to move like that? I do not know. The implants have training programs built in. When I need to fight, they just activate. She looked troubled. It is like someone else takes over. Someone who knows how to kill. But you came back. You are still you, am I? I just killed 4 people, Daehyun. Maybe more. I do not even feel bad about it. Her hands were shaking now. What if I am becoming the weapon they wanted to create? Daehyun caught her hands, stilling them. You are not a weapon. You are a person who did what she had to do to survive. There is a difference. How do you know? Because weapons do not cry. And you have tears on your face. Mirai touched her cheek and found he was right. She was crying without even realizing it. Relief, horror, and exhaustion all mixed together. They sat there in the growing darkness, 2 people who had survived another impossible day. Around them the forest was quiet except for the wind in the trees. The bodies of the fallen hunters lay scattered among the rocks, testimony to the price of freedom. We need to move, Daehyun said eventually. Those 2 who ran will report back. And that ship is still at the landing site. Can you walk? I can do whatever I need to do. He struggled to his feet, accepting her help. We need to destroy that ship. Without it, any reinforcements will take days to arrive. That gives us time to figure out what to do next. You need rest, not more fighting. I will rest when you are safe. He picked up his rifle with his good arm. Come on, let us finish this. They made their way through the night forest, moving slowly because of Daehyun's injuries. Mirai stayed close, ready to support him if he fell. She could feel the electromagnetic signature of the ship ahead, a beacon in her enhanced senses. The cabin was burning when they passed it. The fire lit up the night sky, destroying 15 years of Daehyun's life in minutes. He watched it burn for a moment, then kept walking. It was just a building. What mattered was standing beside him. They reached the landing site just before dawn. The ship was there, sleek and dark against the morning sky. One pilot stood guard at the bottom of the ramp, weapon ready but looking nervous. Last one, Mirai whispered. I can take him. Wait. Daehyun studied the scene. We might not need to kill him. Maybe we can use the ship. Use it how? To get off this moon. To get you somewhere safe, Mirai looked at him. Can you fly a Krillian ship? I can fly anything with engines. It is just a matter of finding the right buttons. He smiled, though it was clear he was in pain. Trust me, I have done stupider things. They moved into position and Mirai called out to the pilot. Your team is dead. You can die with them or you can walk away. Choose now. The pilot looked at her at Daehyun at the WEP. The ship flew itself once Daehyun figured out the basic controls. It was programmed to return to the nearest Krillian station, but he overrode that quickly enough. Instead, he set a course for nowhere in particular, just away from Therion 7 and away from any known Empire routes. They drifted through space for 2 days while Daehyun recovered from his wounds. Mirai proved to be an excellent nurse, her enhanced knowledge helping her treat injuries that should have taken weeks to heal. By the second day, Daehyun could move his shoulder again without wanting to scream. The ship had supplies for a week, maybe 2 if they rationed. It also had a communication system that Daehyun kept offline. Every signal they sent could be tracked. For now, silence was their best protection. We cannot run forever, Mirai said on the 3rd day. They were sitting in the small galley, eating ration bars that tasted like cardboard. The Empire will keep looking. They invested too much in their experiments to just let us go. I know. Daehyun studied the star charts on his datapad. We have a few options. We could head to the outer rim, try to disappear in the uncharted territories. There are settlements out there that do not ask questions, living as fugitives for the rest of our lives. It is a life, better than the alternatives. Mirai was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, there is another option. We could fight back. Against the entire Krillian Empire. That is not fighting back. That is suicide. Not against the Empire. Against the facility where they held me. Against the people who did this. She touched the implants at her temples. I still have the location in my memories. The implants recorded everything. I know where it is, how it is defended, what they are doing there. Daehyun put down his ration bar. Why would we go back to that place? Because there are others still there. Other humans being experimented on, being turned into weapons. When I escaped, there were at least 30 more subjects in the holding cells. Her voice was passionate now. We could free them. We could expose what the Empire is doing. With just the 2 of us, Mirai, I am a woodsman with some military training. You are a scientist with experimental enhancements. We are not a rescue team. Then we get help. We go to the Human Defense Corps. We show them what was done to me, give them the location of the facility. They have to act. The Defense Corps will not start a war with the Krillian Empire over a few dozen humans. The political cost would be too high. Then they are cowards. Mirai stood up, pacing the small galley. Those people are suffering right now. Being cut apart and put back together. Having their minds rewritten. Losing everything that makes them human. And we are the only ones who know where they are. Daehyun rubbed his face, feeling every one of his 38 years. She was right, and he hated that she was right. Because doing the right thing meant putting themselves in danger again. It meant going back to the war he had spent 15 years running from. Even if we go to the Defense Corps, even if they believe us, it will take time. Bureaucracy, chain of command, political negotiations, months, maybe years. So we do not wait for permission. We go ourselves. That is insane. Maybe. But it is also right. She looked at him with those determined eyes. You told me once that you failed to save all your soldiers, that you still see their faces at night. Here is your chance to save someone, to make a difference, Itro. That is not fair. No, but it is true. Daehyun stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the endless stars. He thought about his company, the 97 soldiers who had died under his command. He thought about the medal ceremonies and the empty words from officers who had not been there. He thought about 15 years of hiding in the forest, cutting trees trying to forget, and he thought about Mirai, who had spent 5 years hiding her humanity, being passed from owner to owner, never giving up hope. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it smart. We gather information first. We make a plan, and we only go in if we have a reasonable chance of success. Mirai came to stand beside him, Does that mean you are saying yes? It means I am saying maybe, which is more than you had a minute ago. She smiled, and it transformed her face. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. We might both be dead in a week. They spent the next several hours going through the data in Mireille's implants. It was a strange process. She would close her eyes and concentrate, and information would surface from the depths of her modified memory. Some of it was clear, like watching a video. Other parts were fragmentary, corrupted by damage or suppression protocols. But slowly, a picture emerged. The facility was called Research Station Omega-7. It was located in a system controlled by the Krillian Empire, orbiting a dead planet with no strategic value. That was intentional. No one came to that system unless they had business at the station. The station held between 50 and 70 human subjects at any given time. Some were recent captures. Others had been there for years. The scientists who ran the place reported directly to the Empire's military command. The security is heavy, Mireille said, her eyes still closed as she accessed the memories. 2 ships in orbit, 30 guards inside the station, automated defenses. It is designed to keep subjects in and intruders out. How did you escape during the reactor breach? Luck. The breach caused a system-wide shutdown. All the automated locks failed open. I ran during the chaos, but most of the others did not. They were too conditioned, too broken. They just stood there waiting for instructions. She opened her eyes and Daehyun saw tears. I left them behind. I saved myself and left them. You survived. That is not something to feel guilty about. Is that what you tell yourself about your soldiers? The words hit like a physical blow. Daehyun was silent for a moment. Then he said, No, I tell myself I should have died with them. That I did not deserve to live when they did not. But then I met you, and I started thinking maybe survival is not about deserving. Maybe it is about making the choice to keep going and do better next time. So we go back. We do better. We go back. But first we need allies, and there is only one place I know where we can find them. Daehyun pulled up the star charts and pointed to a system on the edge of human-controlled space. New Busan. It is a military outpost, small but well defended. I served there before the Frontier Wars. I still know people. Will they believe us? I do not know. But they will listen. And that is a start. They set course for New Busan. The journey would take 5 days through relatively safe space. 5 days to plan, to prepare, to come to terms with what they were about to do. On the 4th night, unable to sleep, Mireille found Daehyun in the cockpit. He was staring at the stars, lost in thought. Cannot sleep either, she asked, sitting in the co-pilot seat. Too many ghosts. You? Too many possibilities. What happens if we succeed? What if we free everyone from that facility? What do I do then? She looked at her hands. These implants, these enhancements, they make me something other than human. I can never go back to being who I was, so who am I supposed to be? You are Mireille, that has not changed. But what does that mean now? Am I a scientist? A soldier, a victim? A weapon? She laughed bitterly. I do not even know anymore. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Then he said, When I left the Defense Corps, I thought I was a failure who did not deserve to be called a soldier anymore. I thought I was running away from who I used to be. But maybe I was running toward who I needed to become. And who is that? Someone who protects people, not because it is my duty, but because it is my choice. He looked at her. You get to choose too. You can be whatever you want to be. Scientist, soldier, survivor, all of it or none of it. The implants do not define you. Your choices do. Even if my choice is to fight, especially then. Because you are not fighting because someone programmed you to. You are fighting because you decided it was right. Mireille reached over and took his hand. I am glad it was you who bought me from that traitor. Anyone else would have kept the hood on. I am glad too. You changed my life, Mireille. You reminded me that there are still things worth fighting for. They sat together in the darkness of the cockpit, watching the stars stream past. 2 broken people who had found strength in each other. 2 survivors who had decided to stop running. Ahead of them, New Busan waited. And beyond that, Research Station Omega-7, the mission was insane. The odds were terrible. They would probably die trying. But for the first time in years, both of them felt truly alive. They had found their purpose. Now they just had to survive long enough to fulfill it. The ship flew on through the night, carrying 2 people who had decided that some things were worth dying for. Freedom, justice, the chance to save others from the fate they had barely escaped, and maybe, just maybe, redemption. New Busan appeared on their sensors on the 5th day. The military outpost hung in orbit around a blue-green planet, a cluster of defensive platforms and docking stations surrounding a central command hub. Human Defense Corps ships patrolled the perimeter, their weapon systems active and alert. "They are scanning us," Mirai said, watching the sensor display. "The ship's Krillian signature is making them nervous." "Good. Nervous means alert. Alert means they will listen." Daehyun opened a communication channel. "New Busan Command. This is Daehyun Park, former lieutenant of the Defense Corps, service number 72349, requesting emergency docking and immediate meeting with Station Command. I have critical intelligence regarding Krillian operations against human civilians." There was a long pause. Then a woman's voice came through, sharp and professional. "Former Lieutenant Park, this is Commander Hana Song. Your credentials check out, but you are flying a Krillian military vessel. Explain." "It is a long story, Commander. One that involves war crimes, illegal experimentation, and abducted human citizens. I need to speak with you in person. Lives depend on it." Another pause. "You are cleared for docking at Bay 7. A security team will meet you there. Any aggressive action will result in your immediate destruction. Am I clear?" "Perfectly clear. Thank you, Commander." The ship docked smoothly, and Daehyun and Mirai were met by a full security team, weapons raised. They surrendered peacefully, allowing themselves to be searched and scanned. The scans of Mirai caused immediate alarm. "Sir, this woman is showing non-human readings. Neural implants, physical enhancements, the works. She might be dangerous." "She is human," Daehyun said firmly. "The implants were forced on her. That is part of what we need to report." They were taken to a secure briefing room where Commander Song waited. She was a stern woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. 2 other officers flanked her, both looking skeptical. "Talk," Song said simply. Daehyun talked. He told them everything. The slave trader finding Mirai, discovering she was human, the experiments, the escape, the hunters. He spoke for an hour, laying out the entire story in careful detail. When he finished, one of the other officers shook his head. "This is quite a story, Lieutenant. But you have to understand how it sounds. A retired officer and a woman claiming to be an experimental subject show up in a stolen enemy ship with wild accusations." "I have proof," Mirai said quietly. She had been silent until now. "The implants in my head contain data from the facility. Names, locations, research protocols. Everything you need to verify what we are saying. And how do we access that data? I can show you." She closed her eyes, and the implants at her temples began to glow faintly. A moment later, data began streaming to the room's display screens. Files, videos, research notes. The evidence of what had been done to her and dozens of others. The room went silent as they watched. Test footage of humans being enhanced, modified, conditioned. Research notes discussing the subjects like they were lab animals. Communications between the facility and Krillian military command. Commander Song's face grew harder with each image. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 7 years," Mirai said. "Maybe longer. I only know what happened during my time there. And there are more subjects at this facility now, 50 to 70. Maybe more. They are still there, still being experimented on." Song stood and paced the room. "This is a nightmare. If we move on this, it could trigger a full-scale war with the Krillian Empire. We are talking about attacking a facility in their territory, killing their personnel, exposing their illegal operations. They are torturing humans," Daehyun said. "They are abducting our people and turning them into weapons. Is that not worth going to war over? That is not for me to decide. This needs to go up the chain of command. We are talking about decisions that could affect the entire human sphere. While you are making decisions, people are dying. People are losing their humanity. Every day we wait is another day they suffer." Song stopped pacing and looked at him. "You want me to launch an unauthorized military operation based on the testimony of 2 people and stolen data? I want you to do what is right. What is right might get us all killed." But even as she said it, Song was looking at the data on the screens. At the faces of the human subjects, at the cold clinical notes describing their torture. She made her decision. "I am sending this up to Fleet Command immediately. In the meantime, you 2 are staying here under protective custody. If even half of what you are telling me is true, The Krillian Empire will be looking for you. She turned to her officers. Get them quarters. Medical evaluation for Miss Mirai. And I want every byte of that data downloaded and encrypted. Nothing leaves the station without my authorization. Over the next week, events moved quickly. The data from Mirai's implants was verified and authenticated. Fleet Command reviewed the evidence and brought it to the civilian government. Within days, the story broke across human space. The reaction was explosive. News outlets ran constant coverage. Politicians gave passionate speeches. Citizens held protests outside Krillian embassies. The images of human subjects being experimented on sparked outrage unlike anything seen in decades. The Krillian Empire, caught completely off guard, initially denied everything. Then, when the evidence proved overwhelming, they claimed the facility was run by rogue elements and not officially sanctioned. No one believed them. Diplomatic relations collapsed within days. Trade agreements were suspended. Krillian citizens were expelled from human worlds, and human citizens fled Krillian territory. The two powers stood on the brink of war. In the middle of all this chaos, Daehyun and Mirai waited on New Busan, watching the storm they had started. I thought there would be more delays, Mirai said, watching the news reports. More bureaucracy. You underestimated how angry people get when you hurt their own, Daehyun replied. Humans protect humans. It is who we are. On the 10th day, Commander Song came to see them. Fleet Command has made their decision. We are moving on Research Station Omega-7. A strike force is being assembled now. 6 ships including a marine assault team. When? Daehyun asked. 48 hours. And before you ask, yes, you are both coming with us. The Fleet Admiral wants you there as witnesses and advisors. Plus, Mirai knows the layout of the facility better than anyone. Mirai looked at Daehyun. This is really happening. Yes, it is really happening. The strike force departed New Busan with military precision. 6 Defense Corps ships heavily armed and fully crewed. The mood among the soldiers was grim and determined. Everyone had seen the videos, read the reports. They knew what they were going to find. The journey to the Omega-7 system took 3 days. Daehyun spent the time working with the Marines, helping plan the assault. His experience from the frontier wars proved valuable, and the younger soldiers quickly came to respect him. Mirai underwent extensive medical examinations. The doctors were amazed by what they found. The implants had enhanced nearly every aspect of her physiology. She was faster, stronger, and smarter than a baseline human. But they also found something else. The conditioning protocols are breaking down, the chief medical officer told her. Your brain is rejecting the control mechanisms. In a few more months, you should have full access to all your enhanced capabilities without any of the suppression or conditioning. Is that good? It means you are becoming yourself again. Or a new version of yourself. Either way, you are not their weapon anymore. When they finally reached the Omega-7 system, they found exactly what Mirai had described. The facility hung in orbit around a dead world, 2 Krillian ships patrolling nearby. The station itself was large and well defended. They know we are coming, Commander Song said from the bridge of the lead ship. The Empire must have warned them. Then we hit them fast and hard, the Marine commander replied. No time for them to destroy evidence or kill subjects. The battle was brief but intense. The Defense Corps ships tore through the Krillian defenders with overwhelming firepower. Within an hour, the station's defenses were down, and Marine teams were breaching the hull. Daehyun and Mirai went in with the first wave. The interior of the station was exactly as Mirai remembered, a maze of corridors and laboratories. They moved quickly toward the holding area where the subjects were kept. They met resistance. Station guards tried to stop them, but the Marines were better trained and better equipped. Within minutes, they reached the holding cells. What they found there would haunt them forever. 53 humans in various stages of modification. Some were conscious and aware. Others were lost in conditioning protocols. A few had been modified so extensively they barely looked human anymore. But they were alive. And they were being freed. Medical teams began evacuating subjects immediately. The Marines secured the station and started gathering evidence. Everything was documented, recorded, preserved. In the main laboratory, they found the lead scientist still at his workstation, calmly deleting files. A Marine stunned him before he could finish. Mirai stood in that laboratory looking at the equipment that had been used to modify her. For 5 years, she had lived with the memory of this place. Now she was back, but this time she was free. This time she had won. Daehyun found her there, We need to go. The station is secure.